Annika,
I'm Kristen.
and welcome to Grown Up ABC.
So, today we're going to be having a discussion about Western beauty standards and how the media plays a really large role in perpetuating that ideology. We see this pressure to assimilate as an Asian community, even within the commodification of items such as eyelid tape and glue, which are sometimes sold at a lot of Asian beauty stores. And on those items, the packaging clearly indicates, hey, buy this product, it'll make your Asian eyes bigger. And many Asians have what is called the monolid. So the tape will give you the effect of a double lid, which is like a Caucasian feature typically.
Yeah, no, I really like your discussion about, talking about the monolid and thinking about the role that media plays in all of this, and specifically social media, because it really affects the social thoughts and actions towards Asians. And as we continue to grow up in this media and online saturated world, we have to think about the role that it plays in representation, social, cultural, and political influences, and especially for kids as well. So, one of the big makeup trends this year that I noticed was the fox eye makeup trend. So, this trend involved using winged eyeliner, concealer, and false lashes to exaggerate and resemble an elongated look of almond shaped eyes that look like a fox. So there were many professional makeup artists and amateur artists who would post photos of their makeup on Instagram, and they would place their hands on either side of their eyes and stretch their eyes sideways to make it look really elongated. And then people would share these photos under the hashtag fox eye makeup or fox eye. And this actually created its own specific collectivity under a hashtag online that became really visible to the public. Now, I know both of us have personal experiences as to why these things are racially insensitive and hurtful, but I think it's also really important to recognize that our stories tie into a larger historical sense of racism towards Asians and specifically Asian beauty features.
Yeah, definitely. When I was growing up, I think one of the most common mocks that I saw towards Asians was the whole pulling the eyes to the side thing. And I think when people were doing that, they didn't always even really believe that pulling their eyes that way was culturally insensitive, because I think that the ideology that Asians just have small slanted eyes is just assumed, and it's kind of ingrained into, I think, how a lot of people think. But it's insensitive because it's just not an appropriate thing to do. And also a commonly used compliment that Amanda and I have both gotten from other people is that, hey, you have really nice eyes for an Asian. That's not a compliment when you add the for an Asian at the end, because it just insinuates that Asians just don't have nice eyes as is, and can be really damaging and hurtful to a lot of Asian people. And an example of when this ideology that Asians don't have nice eyes naturally actually affected somebody's life is with the TV personality Julie Chen. You might know her as the host of Big Brother or a couple other shows, but I think Big Brother is probably what she's most commonly known for. She actually shared her story, and she said that she actually did not get any job offers on television until after she got plastic surgery to create a double lid crease, which is typically, like we've said, not an Asian feature. So the fact that she wasn't able to get a job until after that says something about the media industry as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. These little phrases or comments made about Asian features and our eyes and these personal experiences that we have, and, talking about Julie Chen, it's important to note that all of these individual acts are really tied to the history of racism towards Asian people. And we have to acknowledge that the weight that it carries. So, for a long time in history, many Asians were feeling the pressure to alter the shape of their eyes and to make them seem larger. So, like we were talking about before, this double eyelid surgery, it actually became popularized in the early 1950s, and it was first used as a tool for Korean women to assimilate into the US, to make them appear non threatening and to make them look like they were conforming to US beauty standards. We also see this trend happening in Hollywood. So back in the 1930s, there was makeup artists such as Cecile Holland, and she used some of the same techniques to create the fox eyes that we see today. So again, historically racist practice that was happening in the 1930s is also happening today. So back in the 1930s as well, they were also using white actors, and they would use these techniques like the fox eye trend to turn them into villainous Asian characters like Fu Manchu and Mickey Rooney, which we see in Breakfast at Tiffany's. And so a lot of Asians are feeling hurt by this trend. And it's important to see where this is situated as well, in the light of the pandemic that we're facing. East Asians have been increasingly targeted with racist attacks and slurs. We even have the former US president referring to COVID-19 as China virus or the Kung flu. So when people say that this fox eye makeup trend is just something that's fun and it's a trend and people need to lighten up a little bit, it is a continuation of historical racism, and it actually works to normalize this racism towards Asians. So people that argue that it's just something that's fun really need to take a step back and look more at the political and social context happening, because I saw this trend really take its peak in the summer, which was directly overlapping with COVID-19. So it's important that we stay conscious of these events and really take in the whole picture rather than looking at it individually.
Yeah, and just like the lack of awareness to be sharing this fox eye trend, but then blaming, Asian people for COVID, like it's just, uh, and so on to the next topic. So on the contrary to the fox eye trend, another huge social media trend is filters, which, as we will discuss today, erase Asian features. So there are some Snapchat, Instagram filters that are funny. You can have like a rainbow coming out of your mouth and all that stuff, but a lot of them are meant to make us look quote unquote better. But when you think critically, you realize that better in terms of what these filters are providing means to have more Eurocentric features, which is problematic. So, for example, a lot of the features of these filters on Instagram and Snapchat, they make the eyes larger, they change eye color completely, make the nose slimmer, lips a lot bigger, skin paler, and all those features that I'm talking about now, those are not typically ones that Asians have. So for example, a lot of the filters create like a really light eye color, so like blue green, which is, Asians don't have blue or green eyes. We, for the most part, have brown eyes unless there's a genetic mutation. Like we just, that's not a feature that we have. So it's, these filters are telling us, hey, to look pretty, you should have these features. But we've inserted a few photos right now in this video of us just playing around with some of the Snapchat and Instagram filters that do dramatically change our faces, for you to see what we're kind of talking about here, because you can see us now in the video versus the filter. So it's really important that people, specifically people of color and Asians, that we're aware of, that we're constantly immersed in images with filters every day, because it can be easy to forget that these are not real photos, and they shouldn't be the standard of beauty. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves to how people look in these filters. And this discussion is needed because it can make us question beauty standards in media and why they are the way they are, which is a part of a bigger cultural context. And this discussions like this are also needed because we need to remember that Asian features are beautiful, even though social media tells us otherwise.
Yes, exactly. This is truly like a multi-dimensional kind of topic that we're discussing. So, we're seeing a lack of representation of Asians in the media. And then on top of that, we're also seeing social media apps and trends perpetuate Western beauty standards over Asians. And this can be extremely damaging to Asian communities. And that's why critical thinking and also understanding the importance of media literacy and education are vitally important, and even more important nowadays. And that's why me and Kristen have created this ABC channel, because it's really important to open up the discussion and, have more talk that might be contradicting to the dominant narrative that we're seeing today. So next week, we are going to dive right into the topic of media education and media literacy. So we're really excited to talk with you all about that. And we also will talk about its relation to Asian representation in media. So that is something that you don't want to miss.
Yeah, see you all in our next video. Bye.